4:02 a.m., the Strait of Hormuz was shrouded in darkness until 12 unknown targets suddenly appeared on the radar of the USS Spruance. There were only 47 seconds left before the collision that would shake the world, but Tehran had no idea they had just triggered something the US had kept hidden for so long. A massive retaliatory strike that turned the most sophisticated ambush in history into an unimaginable disaster for Iran. What really happened during those fateful 38 seconds? The Strait of Hormuz is the most sensitive lifeline of the global economy through which 20% of the world's oil worth trillions of dollars in liquid energy flows every day. Under the Trump administration's strategic blockade aimed at tightening the economic noose around Iran, the U.S. Navy has turned this waterway into an impenetrable steel wall. For the crew aboard the USS Spruance, an Arleigh Burke-class warship built by General Dynamics, everything began as a typical Tuesday. They glided through the hot, humid fog with quiet professionalism, enforcing a peace that Tehran is desperate to shatter. Over the past 72 hours, tensions had been simmering as Iran's ghost fleet continuously tested American reflexes with AIS spoofing tactics, generating phantom signals on radar. Tehran was growing desperate, seeking a trump card to turn the tide. 4:05 a.m. The silence is shattered. A group of IRGC fast attack boats suddenly surges forward at 30 knots, charging straight toward the USS Spruance along a deadly vector. To deceive Lockheed Martin's Aegis system, they shut off their real AIS signals and spoofed themselves as neutral merchant ships, a calculated gamble. The stern warnings over Link 16 were met with cold silence. No acknowledgement, no change of course. 4:08 a.m. The fleet of boats charged forward, flouting every maritime rule. The countdown ticked away. They had exactly 4 minutes left before reaching the kill zone. Is this a foolish mistake or a sophisticated trick to lure the US into a larger trap? Bless their hearts. Tehran thinks they're playing chess on the open sea, but they've forgotten that the US Navy dominates the digital battlefield, guided by the absolute precision of Aegis radar. 4:09 a.m. While the crew on the bridge of the USS Spruance was focused on the swarm of fast attack craft closing in on the surface, Lockheed Martin's Aegis combat system suddenly triggered an independent Level 1 red alert. This was no longer a simple surface engagement. 40 minutes earlier, mobile launchers hidden deep within the Musandam Peninsula had released a swarm of Shahed 136 loitering munitions. To evade radar, these cheap suicide drones were flying just above the waves at an altitude of less than 100 feet. Tehran's strategy is a masterpiece of deception, using a swarm of speedboats and 3 zombie ships, which have turned off their real AIS to transmit fake signals to create massive chaos. They want the Americans distracted by the tricks on the water while the real threat is screaming in the sky, but the USS Spruance is a link in a digital network that Tehran cannot sever. The destroyer's operations center immediately established a real-time connection with Northrop Grumman's E-2D Advanced Hawkeye aircraft. This aircraft had taken off from the USS Abraham Lincoln on active duty in the Gulf of Oman and maintained an altitude of 25,000 feet. Using its powerful UHF radar, the Hawkeye filtered out the zombie signals and transmitted clear target data directly to the Spruance. 4:15 a.m. 4 Boeing F/A-18E/F Super Hornets, having left the Lincoln's deck just 90 seconds earlier, plunged into the combat zone. Using Raytheon's APG-79A ESA radar, the pilots achieved absolute tactical awareness. In a dominant display, 11 Shahed drones were shot down in exactly 47 seconds. For a brief moment, the Americans believed they had neutralized the aerial threat and gained control of the information domain. 4:19 a.m. Just as the last drone crashed into the sea, Tehran activated the real trap. From coastal bases in Bandar Abbas, a massive electronic wall was activated, a high-power jamming system upgraded with Russian-Chinese technology. Simultaneously, 6 Noor anti-ship missiles, an improved variant of the C-802, were launched from fixed launchers on Qasem Island. These missiles flew at Mach 0.9, skimming just inches above the water's surface. The Aegis display on the Spruance began to flicker and malfunction. Critical data links to the Hawkeye aircraft were severed by intense electromagnetic interference. Countdown 180 seconds. The billion-dollar destroyer was blinded and isolated in a sea of interference with 6 deadly warheads hurtling toward it. Poor them, the sneaky folks in Tehran actually thought that would be the knockout blow. 4:22 a.m. The USS Spruance is racing against an invisible clock. From the deck of the USS Abraham Lincoln in the Gulf of Oman, a Boeing EA-18G Growler pushes its engines to full afterburner. Carrying a lethal combination of Raytheon's ALQ-99 and NGJMB pods, the Growler pilot launches a devastating jamming counterattack. Using spoof jamming and point jamming, the Growler bounces back at Iran's electronic wall, essentially blinding the blinder and carving a digital breach through the chaos. 4:25 a.m. With communication links temporarily restored, the 2 remaining Super Hornets switched to air-to-air mode, optimizing their radars for low-altitude tracking. They fired a salvo of Raytheon's AIM-120 AMRAAM missiles to intercept the incoming NOR missiles from a distance. On the deck of the USS Spruance, the steel shield was activated via a pre-established emergency procedure. Lockheed Martin's SM-2 Block 3A interceptor missiles roared out of the Mark 41 vertical launching system. Simultaneously, Raytheon's Phalanx CIW-SA radar-guided 20mm Gatling gun began rotating its barrel, searching for anything that might have slipped through the outer defense perimeter. The engagement was a chaotic symphony of fire and steel. 3 NOR missiles were destroyed by salvos of AIM-120, AMRAAM, and SM-2 missiles. 2 others were deceived by the Growler's electronic decoys and plunged into the sea. The final one was torn apart by a hail of tungsten rounds from the Phalanx CIWs at a distance of just 500 yards. 4:32 a.m. The entire aerial engagement lasted exactly 38 precious seconds. The Spruance's Aegis system was still experiencing minor interference, but the radar picture was beginning to clear. The immediate threat from the sky had been neutralized, but the cost was the depletion of firepower and a 1-minute loss of tactical awareness. The ship had survived, but the Iranians still had a more insidious layer of attack, silently rising from beneath the water's surface. 4:35 a.m. On the flight deck of the USS Spruance, the adrenaline from the aerial battle had not yet subsided when a new, even more terrifying threat emerged. While the Americans were preoccupied with the blazing skies Tehran had been waiting for, the perfect opportunity to strike from the depths. Hidden for over 48 hours in the treacherous 80-foot deep waters of the Strait, a Ghadir-class mini-submarine, a silent predator built by Iran's Marine Industries Organization, began its mission. Operating entirely on battery power to eliminate all acoustic signatures, the Ghadir was virtually invisible to conventional ship-mounted sonar systems. 4:38 a.m. The Ghadir surfaced to periscope depth in just 30 seconds, long enough to calculate its fire solution. It unleashed a deadly cocktail, 4 smart mines equipped with magnetic and acoustic sensors, immediately followed by 2 U-3 torpedoes. The distance was a mere 1,200 miles, essentially point-blank range in naval combat. Iran had taken a gamble. They believed the Spruance's sonar crews were still deafened by the recent explosions and the lingering interference from the electronic wall, but the U.S. Navy's underwater trap net was already in place. 4:40 a.m., a Boeing P-8, a Poseidon patrolling from Al Dhafra Air Base, detected the periscope breaking the surface. It immediately dropped a series of 12 Raytheon sonobuoys, creating a sonic barrier across the area. At the same time, a Sikorsky MH-60R Seahawk helicopter, having taken off from the deck of the Spruance 50 seconds earlier, hovered over the churning waters. The crew deployed a towed sonar array emitting sound pulses and locking onto the steel hull of the Ghadir, and then the massive surprise appeared. Silently rising from the deep water trench was Boeing's Orca XLUUV extra-large unmanned underwater vehicle. This silent sentinel had been deployed days earlier and was closely monitoring every movement of the Ghadir. The Orca transmitted high-precision real-time target data to the Seahawk. Without a moment's hesitation, the Seahawk pilot launched a Raytheon Mark 54 lightweight torpedo. The entire underwater crisis was neutralized in exactly 2 minutes and 12 seconds. It's like trying to sneak a knife into a gunfight. Poor them. They thought darkness was their friend, but in this ocean, darkness belongs to the U.S. Navy. 4:50 a.m., Tehran had played all its trump cards. Suicide drones were burning on the water's surface. NOR missiles had been torn to shreds, and their secret submarine had been neutralized. But the U.S. Navy wasn't done yet. It was time to rewrite the ending to this confrontation. The commander aboard the USS Spruance calmly ordered, "They tried to use our own playbook against us. Now it's time to turn off the lights." The attack shifted to the Boeing EA-18G Growler. Operating at the aircraft's absolute limits, the Growler pilot activated the full power of the next-generation jammer system. This was no longer defensive jamming, this was electronic suppression on a strategic scale. The Growler blinded all of Iran's coastal radars from Bandar Abbas to Qasem Island. All communications from shore to their ships were reduced to meaningless static. Their electronic wall wasn't just breached, it was shattered. 4:53 a.m. With Iran's electromagnetic spectrum completely neutralized, the E-2D Advanced Hawkeye restored high-speed data links at maximum capacity. The Aegis combat system on the Spruance returned to full auto mode. Its digital eyes were now clearer than ever. The last two Super Hornets carried out a final sweep of the airspace, shooting down the three remaining Shahed 136 drones drifting aimlessly like lost vultures. One by one, the red icons on the Spruance's combat screen disappear. The Iranian fast attack craft, seeing their air cover missiles and underwater support vanish into thin air, begin to flee in disarray toward Iranian territorial waters. 4:55 a.m. The U.S. fleet remained intact, not a single scratch on the Spruance's hull. On the bridge, the tension finally dissipated, replaced by the professional hum of a perfectly functioning machine. For Tehran, this was a catastrophic strategic defeat. As for the U.S. Navy, it was just another ordinary Tuesday. 4:58 a.m. The tactical chaos had subsided, but for the U.S. Navy, neutralization was not enough. This was the moment for the checkmate move, a final, overwhelming display of multi-domain dominance. On the bridge of the USS Spruance, the commander looks at the radar screen, now clear of enemy ships, and issues his final orders. Below the surface, Boeing's Orca XLUUV, the silent architect of victory beneath the waves, remains at periscope depth. Its role shifts from predator to coordinator, transmitting real-time coordinates to the entire strike group. 5:05 a.m. In the Gulf of Oman, the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln began its maximum aircraft launch. The stillness of dawn was shattered by the roar of dozens of Boeing F/A-18E/F Super Hornets and Lockheed Martin F-35C Lightning IIs streaking off the deck. 5:15 a.m. witnessing their tricks shattered and their forces reduced to smoke, IRGCN commanders ordered a chaotic retreat. They withdrew into the shadows of the Bandar Abbas base, leaving behind nothing but charred debris and a shattered reputation. The desperate gamble to break America's economic stranglehold resulted in a catastrophic strategic defeat for Tehran. On board the USS Spruance, combat alert levels were lowered. To the world, it was a 47-minute crisis that could have sparked a global war. But for the crew of the General Dynamics-built destroyer, bless their hearts, it was just another ordinary Tuesday. Tehran's sophisticated ambush was meant to be a knockout blow, but they forgot one thing. The U.S. Navy doesn't just guard the oil lifeline, it controls every inch of the battlefield from the skies to the depths of the ocean. This isn't just a victory, it's a reminder to every adversary on this planet, don't provoke the eagle while it's guarding the world's most critical choke point. Like this video, if you're proud of the men and women in the U.S. Armed Forces, comment "Hormuz is ours." If you want to see part 2 on the secret technologies inside the Orca XLUUV. And remember, this isn't just for the Strait of Hormuz, it's for anyone, anywhere, who thinks they can challenge the U.S. Navy in any body of water in the world.